Are you looking to grow revenues, increase profitability, or obtain financing? If so, you came to the right place.
Running a business is all about leadership. How do you become a better leader? Learn from the successful entrepreneurs and business owners how to lead your organization more effectively. That's why we created Leadership Live at 8:05, Talking Small Business, to help you succeed with your host, Andrew Frazier, Business Growth Pro and CFO and founder of the Small Business Pro University. Every Tuesday evening at 8 p.m. Eastern, we're joined by experienced entrepreneurs and business owners who share their secrets to success via live stream. Also, every Friday morning, we release a new podcast episode. Either way, you will learn about developing your business leadership skills from our roster of highly performing guest experts. Leadership Live is one of the many valuable resources provided through the Small Business Pro University, empowering business owners to learn, profit, and grow. Find out more at sbpro.u.com.
Good evening. Welcome back to Leadership Live at 8:05. I'm your host, Andrew Frazier, and once again, I'm glad to hang out with you on Tuesday evening. As y'all know, especially in the Northeast, we had a little bit of snow on Sunday and Monday. Hopefully, if you're in the Northeast, that you didn't have anything major happen and you've been able to dig out. Fortunately, I was traveling, was able to get out real quick, but my son's there taking care of things. But business is unpredictable, just like the weather can be unpredictable. But you make adjustments, you bounce back, and you do what you got to do. So once again, excited about our topic today. We've talked about the Masterpreneur Playbook and the Masterpreneur Journey and how there's 5 key steps that every business has to take to go from startup to scaling. But not only that, there's 5 stages of evolution that you have to go through as well to successfully move your business through each of the steps. And because of that, many businesses get stuck at a certain area because, your business can only go as far as you're prepared to take it. So you have to continually learn, develop, make adjustments so that you and your business can move forward successfully. So that's really what Small Business Pro University is all about. That's where I focus on helping people through the journey. And tonight, this is our third in a 4-part series about how to go from startup to scaling your business. So we laid out the path. So, the path is, first you start working on the concept of your business. So developing your plan, figuring out what you're going to do and how you're going to focus on a target market. To working in your business. So going from step 1 to step 2, that's when you start, making revenues beyond your initial sales. You find that a lot of plans in working on the concept need to be adjusted, but if you hadn't worked on the concept, it would have taken you longer to make the adjustments that you need to make. Then working in your business, really figuring out your business, figuring out the target market, who's the right market, how you reach the right market, how to deliver your products and services in a profitable way. And then stage 3, working on your business. And between stage 2 and stage 3 is where most business owners get stuck. So that's our show last week. So if you missed, definitely want to check that out because that's one of the hardest stages ever for most business owners. And we had some great insights into what that looks like and what you have to do to make that transition. So today we're going to talk about going from working on your business to working on the future of your business. before you scale, you have to prepare to scale. And this is the phase where you prepare yourself and your business for scaling. Because if you don't prepare, then when you start to scale and grow faster, all your smaller problems become bigger problems. And that's where a lot of businesses run into trouble. Many times it's enough trouble that it puts them out of business, or it really plateaus them, or they have to take a step back before they can move forward. So, I think what they say is, what is it? Proper preparation prevents poor performance. So this is the stage where you scale so that you can avoid the poor performance. So let me bring on my guest, Gene Bohansky. He's taken his business from pretty much 0 to over 100 employees within 2 to 3 years, and really gone through all 5 stages of what we're talking about. So, Gene, let me bring you on. Hey, Gene, how you doing tonight?
Great. How are you? Great to be back.
Yes, definitely. So, always love having you on the show because, you have so much experience and share great insights. And, definitely the business that what you're doing, you're doing some great things. So, we don't need a full intro because you've been here, but if you want to just real quick, for those who haven't caught any of the shows yet, quick intro and quick explanation of sort of your business and where it is now.
Yeah, so I'm Gene Bohansky, Archer's Contact Solutions. I've been a business coach for about 10 years with an alternative board franchise. And out of that, I hired a long time ago a caller from the Philippines to help me get clients as a VA. And now she's my business partner. And, we've been helping a lot of small business owners with virtual assistants. And then 3 years ago, we decided to do this formally by opening a location in the Philippines, solving a lot of the problems that we found happen with people who hire virtual assistants, because we've been through all of them ourselves. And so that's why we started the company. And it is an actual business. We thought about wanting to scale and grow big. So we had to go through all the different stages to get where we are, because it's kind of where we wanted to head. But there were a lot of twists and turns along the way, as you've heard, and you'll hear more about that today, which is what everyone has to go through, actually, when they get their business and they're trying to prepare it to scale, right?
Definitely. So, twists and turns, everybody's path is different. And the entrepreneur's path tends to have more twists and turns in it than other paths. But, that's part of the joy of entrepreneurship.
Right.
So, but, starting out, you mentioned, so just real quick, stage 1 is working on the concept of your business. So what did you do before you started to work on the concept of your business?
Well, I mean, I had a VA myself, and we started off the record, starting to place them with clients. We did some lead generation. Some people were asking for help. I said, well, I can supply. I can hook you up with someone in the Philippines that I know that needs work. And we dipped our toes in it. And so while we were working on the concept, is really thinking about, is there a real business? Is there something that we can grow? Is there something that we can formalize into something bigger, right? Which is not the same as just, stumbling into business and doing business either as a hobby or something on the side, which a lot of us do, right? A lot of businesses we grow, we have come out of other businesses or other ideas, right? And you stumble upon something.
Okay.
So that's kind of how we were looking at it. Like, my partner Virginia always wanted to run a call center herself because she came out of that space in the Philippines, and we thought, well, let's put two and two together and see if we can make something work. So we thought about it, right? We had some experience and some dangerous thoughts. Those two together, end up, you start thinking about developing a plan, right?
Right, right. And, it's interesting that you talk about it this way because, I've heard it said that generally you're most successful on your third business. So, a lot of times you need to.
And I've had two or three before. I've had two or three before, so I guess it's time.
So, you're not always successful the first time or not always fully successful. But, you have to evolve and pivot and make adjustments to get where you need to be. And you talked about how what you thought your business was going to be turned out to not be what your business ended up being. And how did that happen?
Well, yeah, I mean, originally the plan was to do a call center and have larger clients, and that do sales campaigns or customer service campaigns and go after larger clients that would take 5, 10, 15, 20 people. And in those cases, that's what my partner had experience with, managing larger campaigns and the performance of multiple agents on a campaign. And the one that we picked to start with wasn't successful, and we were doing the VAs kind of on the side, virtual assistants, executive virtual assistants. And we found out as we were doing it that we were able to earn more per person and satisfy clients who would be happy to pay us for the services, right? And that's what we learned in doing that, because we kind of did a couple of things, right? We did some lead generation, which I kind of led from my previous sales experience, and then we did some sales campaigns, and then we did executive virtual assistants. We did like 3 things at once, and we found out what was working the best, right? And I think that's what happens when you're working on, in your business and then working on your business. That's that transition where you're starting to learn from what you're doing, right? And everybody has to make some kind of pivot. I mean, I know every business that I've ever been in and owned, we made pivots. I mean, one time when I had the chocolate business, this is a funny story. I had a chocolate business, and it was hard to get off the ground and get started. And a friend of mine called up, and he's like, "Well, why don't you try vegan chocolates?" And I'm like, "Well, I don't even know what vegan chocolates are." So I called up my vendor that was importing chocolates from Belgium. He goes, "Yeah, we have 20 or 30 chocolates that are not made without milk. They're vegan." So, like within a week, I made a catalog sheet for vegan chocolates, and I at the time we had this email harvester. We harvested all the emails for people involved in vegan chocolates. I sent out an email, and we got 5 customers from one mass email, right? And we pivoted, and we became later on number 1 on Google for vegan chocolates, and that became almost half of our business, right? Something out of the blue. And you have to be ready in your own business to accept those ideas, because you're going to get them, right? You're going to get those ideas, and you're going to test them, and then you're going to kind of solidify. And this goes to our next point. The main topic of this is prepare to scale. What do you need to do to prepare to scale? Well, the main thing you need to do is solidify what you're doing, because you can't prepare to scale with your toes in 3 lakes, right? You need to focus on what you're going to do, and build your company around that singular focus, so that you can then prepare to grow it, right? You can't be dabbling in multiple markets, and that gets with a lot of people. A lot of people don't realize that, and they can't give up certain things in order to grow and move in a direction. They want to hang on to all those little scraps that they've been hanging on all that time.
Okay, no, that's the great point. Definitely, you got to prepare before you do things. Even though you planned, maybe your business didn't go as planned, but the planning process was still valuable uh, because you knew where you were trying to go and realized that that wasn't going to be the right answer.
Yeah, well, I mean, in our case, for a virtual assistant business in the Philippines, if you take a look at what you're charging, what the costs are, to make a decent living for someone living in the United States, you got to go to 100 people, right? You got to have 120 people. So the business itself forces you to go through that exercise, right? You're forced to go through that exercise because you have to realize, well, if I need to place 100 people, I need to sell 100 business owners. I got to figure out how to do that, right? I got to figure out what we're going to charge, what we're going to say, what the product is going to be, right? And then we're going to have to staff up for it. We need management team. Because I'm here in the United States, I can't manage them over there, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I can record nice videos. I can share my dream and vision. We certainly went through all the process of having some real planning spreadsheets with understanding of where we're headed, with costs. What is it going to take to do things? We had to plan that and plan and scale it out and understand when we were going to need to make investments, when we were going to need to do certain things, right?
So,
And to your point, you need to plan. You need to plan this out.
definitely. So now, we've talked a little bit about that. So going from working on the concept to working in your business. Last session, we talked about working in your business to working on your business. And, most people don't do that successfully. When did you realize you were pivoting from working in your business to working on your business?
Well, I think it really came about in how my partner and I looked at it. She was very helpful in making sure we built a staff like structure. We built a management structure, and she kind of modeled some of that after some of the call centers she had. We knew some guidelines, like for example, you need one supervisor for 10 to 20 VAs, or 10 or 20 agents. You need to constantly hire, so you have to have an HR team, and you have to have payroll people, and you need to have an accountant, and you need to have a lawyer involved, and you need to have someone in the Philippines running errands all the time, because someone's always going to be standing online in the government agencies getting paperwork certified. Then you need people to train. You need training people. So you kind of have to think about, even, you have to kind of put that business together. It was an investment because I had to live with that for a while and know that we'd have to scale on the sales end, in order to support that and grow that sales, in order to support that infrastructure, because you need that infrastructure in place and ready to go before you're scaling. The biggest thing that you have to do as a business owner is you have to start trusting people. One of the hardest things is realizing and living with the mistakes that other people are making and letting them learn from it, right? And of course, you have to be ready to, in my case, some of those mistakes were costly, because you always run out of money and you always end up having to put more money into it than you expect, right? I mean, all the business I've coached. I mean, you always underestimate how much money you're going to need. You always underestimate how much time it's going to take.
Definitely.
And so,
Many times by 2x.
many times by 2x. And so the real thing the real thing is like, are you able to manage the cash flow? Well, here's the thing that you have, because preparing to scale is exactly here, is that's where you run out of money, right?
Mhm.
You run out of money in that preparation to scale.
Or if you don't prepare while you're scaling,
Or if you don't prepare
run
your
out
while you're scaling,
even
right?
faster.
You can run out of money in that area,
Yes.
especially if it takes longer than you expected and you have to make a pivot. In my
Definitely.
case, I was able to um, I was able to obtain the funds, right? Um, we were able to make it through. Uh, there were some funny times. That's always what any business goes through. I don't know anybody that has a business that hasn't gone through those kind of times, right? Even Elon Musk says he had nothing, right? He couldn't even have money to eat. He was sleeping in the office, right, at the bottom times, right? That's the purifying fire that I talk about, right? That's I think everyone needs to go through that to kind of like be able to focus on making decisions that are real decisions,
Hmm.
because you've run out of money. One of my friends gave me a really interesting way to look at this as a
Okay.
tip. Is he's like, how soon do you press the panic button, right? You're gonna have to you know hunker down, not panic, and see yourself through things, which might mean learning about things you didn't know, learning about business financing that you didn't know, learning other alternative sources to get money. Maybe it's from your family or outside investors, or asking friends, right? Or in our case, I worked with a finance consultant, a loan consultant. It was very interesting. That helped me understand how to finance a business. So there's help there. And you want to learn these things before you run out of money. Unfortunately, a lot of times people need the money, after they've destroyed their personal credit and after they've run out of money, right? And then they have less room to maneuver.
Definitely, definitely. And what I found is going through these phases, a lot of times business owners don't necessarily understand their financials and their numbers
No.
very well going in, but you can't survive most times if you don't if you don't learn that. And that's usually a big major thing that happens.
Yeah, most people don't even do napkin math. I mean, I've always talked about napkin math, right? The business model has to work on a napkin. You've got to know what you're going to be charging for your service. You got to know how much you're going to be earning from that service from day one, right? You got to know that. There was if you want to scale a business, or you want to prepare to scale a business, you've got to be making money. You've got to be making money on the napkin math. In our case, we had to raise prices a number of times. We signed up for this lead generation service that brought us VAs, but they were forcing us to offer these VAs at prices that were too low. We learned later on in the market that the market could bear a much higher price for a higher quality VA. That allowed us to, you know, put more effort into them, into hiring them, pay them more, and see what they were doing. And one of the things about having a business also is you're watching your own business. Are your customers happy? Are you making money? Are you charging enough? Most businesses don't charge enough. Are you making money? Um, are your customers happy? In many cases, you need to get the confidence from your own customers that you're doing a great job, that you can charge enough for your service. And that's really the only way you can like build your business to scale around a model that's working, right? Not only is the model working, you know your target audience, you know the model's working, and you know you're making money, right? And you have all this on a spreadsheet at least. where you could see, like I had a spreadsheet that said, how many agents under contract, what's our management fee, what's the cost per rent per person, what are the other costs? You got to know all that stuff, right? I guess a lot of that is instinctual for me because I remember my first job. I was selling chemical process pumps, and I went through some management training program. And one of the training sessions we had was on how they define the costs of their product, right? And I understood, there's the material cost, and there's the labor, and then there's the overhead cost, and then there's sales and marketing costs, and then there's administrative costs. There's all these layers of costs to developing your service. And, no matter what business you're in, you have the same thing that you have to realize. You have the cost of whatever materials, whatever labor you have on top of that, whatever overhead costs, which are related to the product, which could be rent or electricity or something else. Then you have a cost, first the cost of sales. A lot of small businesses don't realize that cost of sales because it's usually the owner doing the work. But you always have to put in 15 to 20% cost of sales, and then the rest of your admin, and then on top comes profit, right? So you have to have that structure built for whatever product or service you're delivering, and you have to know that when you scale it, as you've mentioned before, a true scaling business allows you to really ramp up profits because your fixed costs are spread over more of the work, right? And so for us, we see that now, as we go from 80 clients to 110 clients with roughly the same fixed costs. Right? We don't really need any more HR people. We don't need any more rent, right? We don't really need a lot of the fixed costs of the company are there. We can get the profit, the incremental profit from those new clients that we have, right? Because most of the other costs have already been covered. But when you're preparing for this, and this is what this main thing is, you have to know that model. You have to build that model for yourself in a spreadsheet someplace and in your plan, that that when you embark on that journey, you're going to get the profits that you expect, right? So this shouldn't be rocket science. I mean, I know some business owners who are afraid to look at their financials and understand this. And the ones that I've coached that wouldn't look, they ran into big trouble because they didn't know what was going on. They didn't know what was going on in their business, right? And you can't scale without knowing what's going on in your business.
Definitely. And then, I like that you mentioned, what scaling is, because a lot of people say the word scaling, but don't really define it, but also communicate it in a inaccurate way. Scaling is something is the fifth step for a reason, because you have to go through the other four steps.
Right. You have to go through the other four. Absolutely. And they have to be done right.
Right. But when you scale, it's not just about selling more. Your profit should be growing faster than your sales. So your revenues might be up 10%, but your profit may be up 25%. Right. And that's a sign of scaling, being able to grow your revenues, but being able to grow your profits faster than your revenues are growing. But right. You can only do that if you optimize your business and understand your costs, so that you can price the right way and you can handle the growth. So that's what this stage is all about. So let me just take a step back. Today, we're going to focus on going from working on your business to working on the future of your business. And, those are steps 3 to step 4 in your business. And, when you look at it as a business owner, you got to evolve through each step. So It evolved from it being just you usually, or you and a partner, to you and some employees, to you supervise employees. And then step 3, you stepping up to take on the manager role, while you set up the structure underneath you with employees and supervisors who can deliver on the day-to-day. So that's where we were in the stage 2, or stage 3, but now we're going to step 4, working on the future of your business. So you have to elevate and become more of an executive as opposed to a manager, and you need to backfill with people who can manage your business more effectively. So, as a manager, you're looking to optimize your business. You're looking at it, making continually improvements from month to month. But as an executive, your role is more on strategy and planning and looking further out, generally quarter to quarter. But you have to have someone looking at the month to month and making improvements. You got to have someone supervising to make sure everything's getting done every week, and you need people to do the work every day to make sure that you're getting the work every day. So, in doing that, you as an entrepreneur need to evolve. So, you had to make the evolution from being a manager role where you were sort of solving problems and making decisions to where you're more of an executive, where you're coaching your managers and empowering them to make decisions and requiring them to make decisions while you're focused on the strategy for how you move forward and grow your business. So how did you make that transition from manager to executive, and what were some of the challenges in being able to do that successfully?
Well, one of the things that I wanted to do with this was I wanted to build the team. So I was looking for the people to build the team. And I was looking, a lot of those people were already working at the company. And I know I needed to have other people do the work because I couldn't do the work, right? And didn't want to because I knew it needed to grow. So I made a lot of trips to the Philippines, and I was meeting the people, and we were talking about how the business is going to be structured, and who the people are going to be to build the team. The next thing was sharing the plan in the near term, and also sharing the dream, right? What are we all working for, right? They all knew we were planning one day we would scale, right? So we looked from the beginning that we wanted to scale. So we prepared the first point with the desire to scale. And so I put the idea in everybody's head that you're going to be growing the structure to eventually be hiring somebody that's going to take over your role, and you're going to be managing more of you, right? And we're going to have to find people who we're going to be able to grow this business with, because we need to grow it. And we need to make sure we work on our processes internally. And we hired a couple of fantastic operations managers to do this, that are still with us, that we knew from before. And really to make sure that we were building a foundation that could scale. I mean, I knew some of this myself, because in a previous life, when I worked for a manufacturing company, I was actually a quality manager and did ISO 9000. I was an ISO 9000 management rep for many years, and there was a lot of things I learned about that carried over into the way the business is run. Making sure we have written procedures, making sure we write down all the work instructions and procedures that every VA does for their client, making sure that we have all that defined. what everybody does, right? That everyone's trained for the role. These are things that ISO taught me. You need to have training for everybody in the role. You need to make sure they're qualified, that they're doing a good job, and that their job is defined. So you have to put, as an executive, you kind of have to put that in place and make people understand the level of professionalism that they have to provide at the job, right? Because at the end of the day, we are working for professionals, and we are hiring young people who this might be their first. They might have had a job before, but their job isn't going to be like our job, because we're hiring the best. Our clients expect the best. We train for it. There's high expectations. So we have to make sure we have our processes down. And you need to have all that down, because as you scale, that's the funny thing about this is as you go to step 4, you still know everyone in your business. You probably still know everybody, and you know everybody who, you know your clients, you know all your employees, you know all your management team. You know that what is scary, and I never realized it until now, is like, once you get over 100 people, 120 people, you don't know everybody anymore. You don't know your clients. You don't know your management team even. You certainly don't know all your employees, because there's just too many. And that's why, they say it's lonely at the top, but it does get lonely, because you hire people to do things and make changes, and you also hire them to make those changes without telling you. Right? That goes on even further. But if you're doing your job as an executive, you're going to learn how to do that. You're going to learn how to hire people and trust them to make decisions for themselves. And you'll end up finding out, months later, oh, we don't do it that way anymore. They changed that procedure, right? I mean, like, if you're a smaller business owner, that might freak you out. How can you own a business and not know what your people are doing? But you have to be ready for that. That's the biggest thing that people aren't ready for. And then trust people, hire great people, and trust them to do that. Of course, that's one of the things we were always looking at, because we've had so many people go through there, both clients. We've lost clients, right? We've lost employees. We've had to fire some employees. With quantity and doing this in a repeated way, we were able to understand, what makes a good VA. How do we assess? How do we do the right assessments? How do we do the right thing so that we hire the right person? We know how to place them with the right client. With any kind of business, whatever you're doing over and over again, you have to constantly figure out how to do that better. And that's all that preparation as an executive that you need to do to prepare for your plan. Because if you want to grow, you got to know all that stuff. You got to know who your customers are. You got to know what your marketing is. You got to know how you're going to be delivering the service, right? It's not going to be you're not figuring out with every client. So it forces you to think in that way. And for me, it forced me, because, like I said, we needed to get over to 100 people to make money for the owners, right?
So, no, I mean, that's the great point. A lot of business owners don't think about culture, don't necessarily understand culture. But if you're going to grow like that, you have to create a high-performing culture. And
it has to work without you. You have to create the framework for that culture that exists when you are gone.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Now, one thing we do is we do a lot of training videos, and there's probably as many hours of me talking that the poor workers have to watch. But you set the vision for the performance, right? So, like, I expect them to be the best. They have to perform the best. We hire the best. We want them to be serious. We're getting them fantastic top-end clients that they'll never get on their own, right? And we're bringing them in through the door, and we're expecting our VAs to rise to that occasion.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's like this when you're parenting. There's parents that tell their kids that they're terrible, right? Or I remember one of my friend's mothers said, "Oh, Mike's not good at math." You never say that to a child, right? Never, because first of all, it's not. It can be not. Could be not right. I remember I said I was lousy at writing when I was young. Now I'm a good writer, right? I know other people that were lousy at math, and later on they got good at math, right? As a parent, you never trash talk your kid, right? Because it leaves a mark on them, right? And the same thing with employees, right? You tell your employees that they're going to rise to the occasion, that you respect them, and that you expect them to do well, and they will, right? Same with your managers, right? We had some conversations about how, with the last one, about how some people yell at their kids all the time, right? And you can't do that, right? You have to inspire them. You have to inspire greatness in people, right? And you have to allow them to learn, and you allow them to grow, and build a culture around that.
Definitely. And share the dream,
Share the dream.
your
Yeah.
team has to be bought into what you're doing, where you're going. And that's how you bring on a team that's aligned and stays aligned, even though you're not there.
That's right. That's right. It's
And
great.
then,
And we're going to have, I hope if we meet our goals, looks like we will, we're going to have our 3rd anniversary gala in the Philippines, where we have basically a big banquet with maybe, 150 people in attendance. It'd be huge. You don't have to do that. You don't have to spend the money on that, right? We did one after a year, and people loved it, and it did great for people's morale. People loved the company. You got to do things as a business owner for your people that inspires loyalty and greatness in them. They want to go home and feel that they did a good job, and that they have management that cares about them. Now, you don't have to do that to run a business. That's just the way I want to run the business. But also because we're trying to change the culture, right? We know that um, we need to inspire people to be confident enough to be great virtual assistants, so they're confident enough to perform, right? Um,
and, and also, I mean, one of the things is you've set goals for what needs to happen for that to happen. And I think, whenever you have a culture, you can know what you want to have people do and want them to be like, but you also have to reinforce the behavior that you want. And
yeah.
part of that, setting a growth goal before that happens, so everybody's on the same page trying to make that happen.
And those goals are different. Like
Hmm.
we have goals. We have goals for hiring, right? We need to hire a certain amount of people. We have goals for sales and onboarding. We have those kind of goals. We have goals for KPIs for retention, right? Employee retention and client retention,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
So I mean, like, there's many ways that you can create KPIs and goals in your company that all work together, that let people know that yes, we're on a direction, we're growing, we need everybody's help. This is an exciting journey that we're on, and the ownership should should do this, right? And that
Definitely.
when they're an executive, um, that's really what you're trying to instill in the team, because you're going to be you're when you become that CEO, you're the pilot in the aircraft, right? That is going to give that direction, and everyone's got to be going along with you, right? And want to succeed with you. And you have to have that. You're like in a plane, right? The plane knows where it's headed. The flight path is defined, right? It knows where it's going to land. It knows where it's going. And as a CEO, if you've got that big you're commanding that ship. You're taking that person to a destination, right? And as you prepare yourself to scale, as you build, you're learning, you know, do I have the right people? Do I have the right market? Do I have the right strategic plan? Do I have the right funding? Um, is this ready to go? Is this going to happen? Can it happen? Right? Does the math work out? Are the people ready? Are the customers ready for what we're offering? All that has to be aligned. All those questions have to be answered in step 4.
Definitely. And it can't just be you figuring out those answers. It becomes complex, and you need a team, and a good team of professionals working with you. At that stage, you should be building up a management team that, each manager of each area should know more about their area than you do.
That's absolutely
Yeah.
right. You have to have that. And you have to have that conversation with them. You have to know, like, and trust them, especially if you're going to go on the journey with that team. And you know that any big company, they've always had the CEO and his team, right? And they had other people under them. They bring them up with you, right?
Mhm.
You have to want that. You have to want to bring them with you. You have to want to coach them, and you have to be that leader. The leader that inspires, right? I mean, there's other CEOs once the business is kind of settled or, maybe declining. That's not what we're talking here. If you're trying to scale up a business, if you're trying to grow your business and plan for the future, you're going to need people that are inspired by you and are aligned with you. In fact, one of the things that I learned from my alternative board franchise, they talk a lot about alignment, right? So alignment is something that you need with your whole management team, that you're all on the right track, which means sometimes you go out with them, right? You take them out to dinner and you talk to them. You find out if you are all aligned. Is everyone on the same page? Is everyone going together, right? You have to know that your management team is aligned with you, and you don't have people with their own agendas, right?
Okay. And definitely. And, just to look at the 5 steps and really what it takes to go from stage 3 to stage 4. In step 3, working on your business, you're putting into place your processes and procedures. You're overcoming your key challenge of being able to manage effectively. And you've got to build your organizational structure of having supervisors so you can be the manager. And, as a manager, your most important leadership skill is analysis. But to achieve step 4 successfully, working on the future of your business, your goal changes. You've really got to develop your strategic growth plan. So it's about developing your strategies. But also, you've got to develop a leadership team that can lead without you successfully. And like Gene mentioned, that can be scary and difficult too. You've got to find people who can manage, but not only manage, you have to let them manage and not micromanage them. And the only way you can do that successfully is as coaching them, as opposed to managing them, letting them, requiring them to make decisions and, on behalf of the organization, while you give them guidance around it, but not solving the problems for them. So, that's really what's happening in that stage. And, based on what we've talked about, those are a lot of things that you had to do, and that prepare you.
Yeah. Coaching is important. If people, I mean, I have to tell you, I never really understood what coaching was until about 12 years ago. It wasn't something I heard in my career, right? coaching actually has to start also from a desire that you want to see other people succeed, right? You want other people to be successful in their roles and for them, right? If you're coaching business owners, you have to want them to succeed. You have to have a desire to see other people succeed. And it can't just be about yourself and the money that you're making. If you want to inspire greatness, you have to want to see people succeed and enjoy watching people rise to the occasion and succeed in their leadership roles. Because if you're a CEO, most likely, or a manager, most likely you're going to be coaching and inspiring a younger generation. In my case, in the Philippines, most of the people that work for us are there in the mid to late 20s. I've just turned 58, right? I'm twice, if not more than twice, the age of my employees, right? So, you have to want to see them succeed. You have to see that, and they get it. And when they see it, they get inspired.
Okay. Excellent. So, we're coming up, an hour is never long enough to do this, but at least we can share some valuable insights. We've got some great comments in the chat, so definitely appreciate everybody having comments in the chat. But we also have a question, and it actually ties perfectly into something that you're working on. You're working on your first book now, right?
Right. That's right.
And what's it called again?
Delegate or Die.
Okay. So where you talk about the answer to this question, which is what should be outsourced when scaling, what roles should be outsourced within your business, and how should you outsource them?
I actually think the best kind of thing that you can outsource is actually lead generation. You could most of the time, once you have your market set and you know who you want to target, it's getting in leads. It's getting in more leads than you can handle is usually the tough spot. And I'm a strong believer that lead generation should be outsourced. We do it ourselves for other people, but we also outsource it to other people. We also hire people to help us get leads because that's a science that is always changing, and there's many ways to get leads for any business. And so it's always worth finding people that have more experience than you doing it. And for example, if you're a B2B business, you can do Facebook ads, you can do LinkedIn ads, you can do LinkedIn campaigns, you can do Google AdWords, you can do cold calling. There's so many ways to generate leads. What's going to work for you? Well, you can't always be an expert on it. So we always hire people to show us new tricks and bring us leads. That's the thing that should be outsourced, I think. Once you know your target, once you have a process and you have everything set up.
Okay. No, that's great. And actually one thing that also identifies or is there's a trap that many business owners fall into, and they think they could just hire a salesperson and all their problems will go away.
Oh, that's a subject. I think we had a whole
right.
program on hiring salespeople, which is,
right.
That's another story.
It's another story, but it's an important story because so many people fall into it. And a big piece of it is you need leads and lead generation versus sales many times.
It's two different things.
Two different things, but a lot of people skip the lead gen, and you can't sell effectively if you don't have a good source of lead generation. So,
That's right.
we did do a show on that's a multi-hour thing, but just keep in mind that.
Well, think about this. If we want to grow, we have targets that we want to onboard 10 to 20 clients a month, right? That's a lot of clients, right? I mean, if you're a coach or a consultant, you're happy to get one client a month, or maybe one a week. But try onboarding 4 clients a week, 4 to 5 a week. That means if you have a 30% close rate, you've got to have 70 discovery calls every month, right? That's almost 20 discovery calls a week.
Yep.
You gotta bring people in. How do you do that?
Right.
Right. That's just a question. How do you do that? You got to figure it out.
Yeah. And that's part of your plan for scaling, because you're not going to scale if you don't figure out how to consistently grow your revenue. So,
and you can't really bring that kind of volume in without this preparation phase, right? Without stage 4, understanding and having everything in place. How you're going to deliver your service, how much money you're going to make on it. How much is it going to cost to get a client? You got to put that in, right? You got to put the cost of acquisition. It's part of that in there, right? You got to really have the analysis done so that if you're going to scale, you're going to be making money, not losing. You're losing money, but you're making it up in volume, right?
And that just means you're losing more money faster.
More money faster. I've seen people do that.
Yes,
I've seen people do that and not understand their costs. I'm working with someone right now that's in that position, and you got to understand the costs of doing business, right? Because anytime you do that, you're going to find things you didn't know. Right? When you do an analysis, any fine analysis is going to come up with insights, because, as people, we base our impressions on our initial impressions, right? What we learned first. And the problem with that is things change, right? And things are not the same as when you first learned about it. I mean, it's like that with everything. It's like somebody buying a car because they remember them being reliable 20 years ago, right? And 20 years later, that car brand is owned by a different company. The cars are designed by different people, and they're made in totally different plants with a different technology. And there's no connection between the car today and what was made 20 years ago. But the person still has their feeling about what that car and brand was 20 years ago, right? It's the same thing when you're running a business, right? Your impressions of when the business started, you were smart, you knew everything. 5 years later, your customers are different, your costs are different, everything is different. You go back, you do an analysis, and oh my gosh, I learned something I didn't know.
Right. And also, most things are qualitative understanding. And, when you're focusing on qualitative and not quantitative, many perceptions you have may be wrong from the beginning.
Yes, that's correct.
And, the only real facts are numbers. So, you bring your personal biases into what you're looking at on a qualitative level, but on a quantitative level, you're not able to do that. So tends to be more accurate and realistic in many cases.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen it over and over again, running analyses of, sales analyses for manufacturing companies of product lines, where the owners thought they were making money in certain areas, and they found out they weren't at all. And they were losing money on certain activities. And there was huge opportunities to optimize and change what they were doing to really focus on profit. And I expect any business that's been around for a few years or has those things going on.
Yeah. And it's not like they're necessarily a poorly run company. There's just, evolution, opportunities. I worked with a manufacturing company. They were profitable. They were making money. They were doing well, but we were able to double their profits on the same sales. So there can be that much ability to lead more effectively and efficiently, and really reap major benefits.
Yeah, I would say that that's another thing in the fourth phase, right? Is the relentless focus on efficiency and making sure the product and service is making the maximum amount of profits. You know what that is, right? Because when you ramp it up, you want to ramp it up with profit, not losses. And these are the kind of things, the analysis that you've put in there, that analysis of what you're doing and how you're going to be growing and how you're going to be scaling begins in this stage when you're figuring out what it is that you're doing and what it is that you're making. Making sure your napkin math is accurate.
Definitely. So, always enjoy talking to you. Time always flies with the show, but before we close out, definitely want to have you share like the top 3 things people should take away from this, because it's important for them to know more specifically. Well, what should what should I take from this and focus on as I go forward? You need a sec, or are you ready?
No, I'm ready. So I think the first one that we mentioned is that you really want to coach your team and want to see them succeed. You're going to be building a team. You're going to want to see them succeed. The second thing is you have to be the inspiration. You have to have the vision and strategic goal for your team to succeed and make sure they're all aligned on the same path, right? That's very important. It got to be all aligned and inspired by you. You're the pilot in the plane. And third is that relentless focus on efficiency to make sure you know your costs of doing the service, making sure if you're going to be ready ramping up that you're making profit. You've got to know your costs and the profit that you make for every unit of service you're providing. You got to know it. You can't be afraid of it. It's definable, and it needs to be defined before you get ready to scale.
All right, great. So, coaching your team is critical. So definitely number one. Second, vision and inspiration. As your organization grows, you need to become more of a symbol or inspiration, because you're not always going to be able to touch everybody personally, but they still need to know who you are, what your organization's about, what role they have, and be excited about supporting the mission and being aligned. And then finally, relentless focus on execution. You have to learn how to run your business by the numbers. You can't run it by the seat of your pants. You have to, have goals, have measures, have your KPIs, and really have the right ones, and focus on them. Focus your whole team on them, and use those to lead and manage more effectively. So, this has been great, Gene. Always appreciate having you as a guest on the show. Not many people get to be on more than one episode, so that definitely says something about the value that you can bring to the table. And
I appreciate that, and I hope I'm inspiring people to go on this journey. Because it's a great journey.
Because it is a great journey. It may sound scary, but that's part of the growth and the greatness of it. So definitely hang on for a minute, Gene. I'm going to close things out, and we'll go from there. So first off, hopefully everybody you got something valuable out of this. We talked about some really important things. Of course, you got to get your business to that level. So depending where you are along the journey, we've actually broken it down into each of the steps. So if you're not quite here yet, it's good for you to know what it takes here. Look at, going from working on the concept of your business to working in your business to working on it. And then this one's going from working on your business to working on the future. And then we're going to wrap up the series with Gene on how to go from working on the future of your business to actually successfully scaling. So each of those, like we talked about, you're going to have a different goal. You're going to have a different challenge you have to overcome. You're going to have to build a different level of structure underneath you. You're going to have a different leadership skill and ability that you're going to have to demonstrate to be able to successfully move forward. So, once again, appreciate you joining us. Next week, we don't have Gene next week, but he'll be coming back soon thereafter for the final show. But actually next week, we're going to have a show with Anthony Conover. And actually, he's someone I'm working with now. And we're actually working on the future of his business. So we're going to talk about, what it looks like to work on the future of the business. And not just that, sort of, how he got to a certain point and plateaued. And now we're, successfully working on his business and having a good business running, but now how to really take what he's created and significantly grow it and scale it. So definitely looking forward to sharing that because he's actually going through the process right now, and we'll have some tremendously valuable things to share as well. So hopefully you can join us next week for that. And as always, the more that you know, the faster and more successfully your business is going to be able to grow. So I look forward to seeing you next week, and I always appreciate you tuning in.
Thank you for listening to Leadership Live at 8:05, Talking Small Business. Subscribe to our YouTube channel and to the podcast on your favorite podcast platform. Leadership Live is one of the many valuable resources provided through the Small Business Pro University, empowering business owners to learn, profit, and grow. Find out more at sbpro.u.com.